Welcome to the Soulful 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗀 podcast, where the cosmos meet the cards and the mundane becomes magical. I'm your guide, 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗀 𝗀, and in this episode, we'll explore the astrological transits and tarot for the first half of November 2025 with a part 2 episode coming mid-month. Now let's fill up your cup until you're soul full of it. Hello, soul friends and family. Thank you for tuning in for another episode in the midst of these, I guess we're calling it unprecedented times. I want to start with a quick heads up. I'm going to open up this episode by talking about the political landscape or hellscape, depending on your perspective, that's currently unfolding all around us. I totally understand and support anyone who doesn't care to hear that. That's exactly why I always include timestamps below in the show notes, so you can skip to the parts that you want or easily find them later on if you come back to re-listen. As I'm recording this, the United States government remains shut down. Many federal workers, including our already dwindling supply of essential air traffic controllers, are still working without pay. 42 million people in the United States, that's 1 in 8 Americans, who rely on SNAP benefits, are set to lose access to receiving their food assistance this month. Meanwhile, ICE agents continue collecting their paychecks as they terrorize the tax-paying citizens who fund them, and Congress has been on an extended vacation since September 30th. Speaking of our so-called representatives, members of Congress, along with the president of billionaires, the divided states, continue to receive their salaries while their staffers go unpaid. The disparity between the haves and the have-nots has never been more blatant, and this administration seems to get off on rubbing salt in the wound. Case in point, bulldozing the east wing of the White House to build a new ballroom, which I can only assume will serve as a billionaire bunker when the people finally decide to eat the rich, literally. If it sounds like I'm going off the political plank here, I am. Because this world is full of warships and pirates, and I've never been known for my silence. We're calling all of this unprecedented because we've never seen this before. A government shutdown that willfully and pridefully strips food from its people. A Speaker of the House who refuses to swear in a new member because he knows it will tip the scales of justice towards exposing Epstein's client list. Beyond American borders, Hurricane Melissa has been on a path of destruction, stealing lives and devastating communities in Jamaica and the Caribbean. Meanwhile, protests are rising in the UK as people rally against the non-consensual implementation of digital IDs, and a movement for a general strike beginning on Black Friday and stretching into the new year, effectively canceling Christmas and all the consumerism it's known for, is beginning to build momentum. Speaking of consumerism, Amazon just announced the first of its job cuts, about 30,000 jobs, despite record profits, and I have officially joined the anti-Amazon movement by finally canceling my subscription. If you have an Amazon subscription and you haven't canceled it yet, I think it's worth considering why that is and what kind of honey we have all been trapped in. I say that with no judgment and no intention to shame, but rather the full transparency that I myself had to wake up to the reality that convenience has a cost, and what's being sacrificed, dignity, humanity, morality, is far more valuable than 2-day shipping and not at all sweet like honey. I believe in calling yourself out in order to call yourself back in. When we allow ourselves to get quiet, no music, no scrolling, no podcast, no TV show on in the background, and sit in our own energetic field, we all know that what's been going on is more than, quote, not normal. There is a darkness pulling the strings and trying desperately to overwhelm our intuitive knowing with chaos and information overload to distract us from seeing through all of these illusions. The message that's been coming through for me that feels really potent to share is to remember the whole. We are all parts of a bigger whole. And when we are united in efforts, and on a grander scale, energetically united, we wield a collective power that money cannot buy, and in order to make use of this power, we must wake ourselves up and remember who and what we really are. Love in perpetual motion, not transaction. We are at a critical crossroads, quickly approaching the next great rebuilding. We're waking up so that we can build a better tomorrow, which means that the old ways, the old structures, the old systems and beliefs are going to have to come down in order to make way for the new to take root. And that is a story I see seated within the current astrology that I was very interested in when I noticed a significant pattern within the numerology. Last month in mid-October, we had a new moon in Libra. It was at 28 degrees. Our next new moon in Scorpio this month will also be at 28 degrees. And so will the new moon in December, again at 28 degrees, but it gets weirder. We have a 28 degree new moon in January, as well as February, which is an eclipse, by the way. And then the last new moon at 28 degrees will be in March 2026. That's 6 new moons at the same exact degree. A half of a year seeding a new beginning, deep within an ending. Because 28 degrees is, of course, the degree before 29, which is known as the anaretic degree, the degree of fate. Therefore, 28 degrees is the penultimate degree of completion. It signifies we're nearing the end of a karmic cycle. Pretty interesting, right? Well, it gets even more interesting when you look at the full moons. Starting with this month, we will have the first of 4 full moons, all at 13 degrees, coinciding within the pattern of this larger 6-month new moon story. The 13th degree is about restructuring, recalibrating, and reorienting ourselves through illumination, release, and reclamation. The 13th degree is linked to Aries, cardinal fire, while the 28th degree ties to Cancer, cardinal water. Both are initiators, and both carry the power to catalyze deep change. And with Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn and Neptune preparing to re-enter Aries, it feels like the universe is showing us how destruction and rebirth dance hand in hand. Astrology is a tool. It's a way of interpreting the passage of time. It's a lens through which we can view and blend the physical with the spiritual from our earth-centered perception of our reality. It's a reminder, too, of the duality of life as we know it. There is no light without darkness, of course. So, what does it all mean? To me, these patterns are confirmation of what I already know to be true. Our world is changing rapidly, and we all have important roles to play and critical choices to make. Either we choose complacency, holding close the comforts and conveniences of the lives we currently live, submitting to the compliance required in order to keep the illusions going, or we choose the path of sovereignty and embrace the unknown costs of true freedom in favor of creating a life worth living fully awake. Awakening may be uncomfortable, but comfort has never been the catalyst for evolution, and in our current cosmic climate, what we're headed towards is revolution. And with that, before we dive into the transits, let's turn to the tarot to see what these first weeks of November are revealing. Beginning with, at the center of our Soulful of Wisdom spread as the wisdom or the rose, we have the Queen of Pentacles. In the traditional Smith-Rider-Waite deck, the Queen of Pentacles sits upon a throne adorned with vines and carvings of fruit and goats, symbols of prosperity and success. She is surrounded by lush greenery and flowers as she gazes at the golden pentacle that she's cradling in her lap. A rabbit appears near her feet, representing fertility, abundance, and the natural cycles of creation. This queen reminds us to tend to what we have, not from fear of losing it, but from gratitude of what brings us sustenance. As our center card, she grounds this month in practicality and care. Her presence is a reflection of self-sufficiency and of knowing that if we want to feel soulful, we must nourish every aspect of ourselves, emotional, physical, and spiritual, because the outer world is influenced by our inner world, and weeding our gardens from within helps us fortify our strength to navigate the world around us. Then for our attention or thorns, if it isn't the devil himself, returning once again, marking his 4th appearance this year. He's perched above 2 naked people, 1 man and 1 woman, who are bound by chains that look pretty loose, almost like they could just slip them right off, and yet here they are, standing there like they are chained to this devil. Speaking of the devil, his torch is burning downwards, symbolizing inverted energy, and the reverse pentagram above his head speaks to materialism overpowering spirituality. Each time the devil has appeared this year, he has challenged us to confront what binds us. Addiction, fear, control, codependency, all of which are stories we tell ourselves. There may be some truth in those stories, or they may be entirely fictional, and the only way to discern the difference is to break the chains we perceive ourselves to be wearing. Crossing the Queen of Pentacles, the devil asks, what comforts have become cages? Because it's not enough to nurture abundance, we must also examine whether the systems that feed us are feeding off of us. This is an invitation to rewrite the narratives that keep us blind to our own magic and to reclaim our energy from any toxic attachments disguised as security. Next, for the basis or root position, we have, of course, the Tower. I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. Lightning strikes and fire erupts. A crown comes flying from the top of the tower as people fall like rain amongst the flames. The imagery is disruptive and shocking, representing a necessary collapse that makes room for revelation. At the root of this spread, the tower signals collective and personal breakdowns that catalyze awakening. It's very much a no king's energy, especially with that crown coming off. The message is simple and it's not sweet. Whatever is crumbling was never stable to begin with. It asks us to trust that there is purpose in the destruction as a form of deconstruction. It's not painless, but it is purifying. The foundation needs to crack in order for light to enter. The illusion of stability is sand slipping through our fingers. This is a moment of embracing entropy and holding faith that what will replace the tower with time will be a bedrock of bigger, brighter things. Then for the guidance or sun position to close out the spread, we have Justice, seated on a throne, poised between 2 pillars, sword facing the sky in the right hand, scales balanced in the left. She looks forward deliberately, her eyes wide open to the truth. She embodies equilibrium between logic and intuition, reminding us that each choice, thought, and action carries an energetic weight. Having last appeared in the April Part 1 episode as our wisdom, her return now as our guidance feels like a karmic checkpoint. Justice reminds us that integrity is not about perfection, but soul alignment. She says, act as though your choices create your future, because they do. As our guidance, she encourages us to consider what truths must be faced in order to be transformed, what imbalance are we called to correct, and what choices do we have to make in order to strike a balance. Together, these cards form a powerful arc of awakening. The Queen of Pentacles grounds us in self-trust and care. The Devil exposes what we've over-identified with or given our power away to. The Tower clears the debris of illusion, making space for the rebuilding to begin. And Justice illustrates how we can restore balance through self-awareness and choice. As we move into the month of November, these cards present us with a cycle of reclamation, from comfort to confrontation, from collapse to clarity, reminding us that what falls away this month may be precisely what sets us free. Now that we've tapped the tarot, let's continue to fill your cup up until you're so full of it by diving into the transits. Beginning with a shift on election day, Tuesday, November 4th, as Mars enters Sagittarius. Mars rules fellow fire sign Aries, so it's a planet that's used to fiery movement. In the sign of Sagittarius, Mars empowers us to embody the archer. We become very goal-oriented in our ambitions. Sagittarius is the philosopher and the adventurer, so you can make the connections between those archetypes in this transit to gather that our movements for these few weeks are focused around the knowledge and understandings we seek to gain and the heights we seek to summit. It's about a 6-week time period of aligning the actions we take with the learning and exploring we desire. Some things you can simmer on over the coming weeks as we move through this transit collectively are personal inquiries around what adventures you're most keen on and what knowledge you're eager to gain, and consider what actions must you take in order to bring those things to life. I love Mars in Sagittarius for goal setting, trip planning, and big picture daydreaming. It's a transit ripe for chasing ambitions and breaking down the steps necessary to reach your destination so that you can get there steadily, one step at a time. Then on Wednesday the 5th, we have the full moon at 13 degrees Taurus taking place at 5:19 a.m. Pacific time. This is a supermoon, just like the last full moon was, and it will be followed by one more supermoon next month as well. Looking at the chart, the sun and moon aren't in aspect to any other planets with one exception. The sun trines Saturn, but that's a very loose trine as the sun is at 13 degrees and Saturn is at 25 degrees. But still, it's worth looking at as it's part of the story of this full moon. Saturn happens to be in an exact trine to Jupiter in Cancer, so there's a helpful game of telephone occurring between what we're releasing with this full moon, the structures we're operating within or rebuilding, and the expansion we're seeking. Venus, the ruler of this Taurus full moon, is in a square aspect to Jupiter, so the pressure that's coming up with this full moon is a continuation of the story from last month around our relationships. The expansion you're calling in could come at the cost of the approval or praise of a loved one, as in, they're not praising you for it. In fact, they may be actively warning you against it. This happens all the time when we get excited or ambitious and we share our dreams or plans with someone we love, and their immediate reaction is to pour water all over the flame of potential that we've shared with them. Often people don't do this to crush our dreams, but more so to help us manage our expectations in case things don't pan out as we're hoping that they will. So part of this supermoon is about us letting go of what others think or feel about our hopes or ideals, and it's about giving ourselves permission to push forward towards that which inspires and excites us, regardless of all of the noise around us, good intentions or not. The moon in Taurus wants us to feel good, and we tend to feel better when we aren't carrying the weight of others' opinions. It's one of those don't take directions from someone who isn't familiar with the road you're traveling or the destination you're headed towards kind of things. In the backdrop of this full moon, we have a minor grand trine, which is comprised of a trine between Uranus and Gemini and Pluto and Aquarius, and both of those planets are in a sextile aspect to Neptune in Pisces. This aspect pattern is one that's going to be with us for a couple of years. It began forming in July 2025, and it will continue until June 2028. So we will keep talking about it, but for now what I'll say is that this is a beneficial and generally positive configuration that's also quite rare. This is a planetary lifeline that is in support of the revolution as it's forming now before our eyes, and it's a cosmic caregiver for the collective as we move through advancements in technology unlike anything we've seen or experienced before. The last aspect I want to highlight for this Taurus supermoon is the opposition between Mars at 0 degrees Sagittarius and Uranus at 0 degrees Gemini. Uranus is about to backtrack into Taurus, which we'll be talking about here soon, and its exact opposition to Mars is a messenger of the upheaval I think that this full moon may be bringing with it. We're going to continue to see civil unrest and protests as people push back on the bought and sold media's continued campaign of misinformation, as well as the unwarranted aggression coming from ICE agents domestically here in the US, as well as criticism around violence our own government continues to fund by participating in these wars and even instigate by bombing Venezuelan boats under the allegations of drug smuggling that completely lack evidentiary support or due process. On a personal level, I see this full moon highlighting conflicts within our own interpersonal relationships so that we can bring them out to the light, acknowledge them, heal them, release them, and also presenting an opportunity for us to pick and choose which cheerleaders and critics we're listening to. And on a collective level, I see it adding a bit of fuel to the fire of the growing movements against abuses of power. It's also the first of 4 full moons that we have at this 13th degree, which again is an Aries degree, and Aries is the warrior. So I do think that this full moon is going to bring some sort of conflict with it, and it will feel fiery despite being an earthy supermoon. Then on Thursday the 6th, Venus enters Scorpio, where it will transit through until the end of the month. People with their natal Venus in Scorpio tend to love a good mystery, form strong emotional and psychological connections, and aren't afraid to fight for what they believe in passionately. Their love is deep, and so are their conversations. On the dark side, they can also be secretive, possessive, and intense. I know all of these traits all too well myself because I have my own natal Venus in Scorpio, and the way I see it show up in my own life is that I'm simply not a surface level person. Venus in Scorpio as a transit collectively is about going deep, sometimes to the strangest or most taboo places. It's about truth, and in alignment with our tarot cards of this episode, it's about embodying justice. Venus in Scorpio is an amazing transit for deepening close bonds with others, as well as yourself. So over these next few weeks, you might catch yourself saying the quiet parts out loud. Venus in Scorpio doesn't sit on the sand or on a boat or a floaty. No. Venus in Scorpio is a walk the bottom of the ocean with me kind of energy. And not everyone can hold their breath that long, so be discerning about who you invite to go deep with you, and try to keep a pulse on any part of you that feels the need to convince or manipulate people into being prepared to dive deeper when they just want to tan on the shoreline. Remember that when you do come back up for air, they'll still be there and you can enjoy them then, even if they aren't part of the great mysteries that you feel called to explore during this transit. Then the week continues to bring shifts as we have Uranus re-entering Taurus on Friday the 7th. Uranus will be in Taurus until late April of next year, and this is the last time that we will see Uranus in Taurus in our lifetimes, as it takes 84 years for the planet to complete a full orbit through the zodiac. Uranus entered Taurus back in May of 2018, so you can think back to that time frame, and of course you'll also want to look at what house you have Taurus in to get a sense of what stories have unfolded in your own life that are reaching a close at this time. Since Uranus is a transpersonal planet, its effects tend to unfold more collectively than personally. And it's also very intertwined with generational influences. So if you're thinking back to 2018 and you're not sure how this transit impacted your life, just know that it's more likely to be something that you'd see reflected within the wider public rather than your personal experiences. That being said, if you have your sun, moon, or rising sign in Taurus, then this re-entry of Uranus is going to be felt more personally for you than for the rest of us. Uranus is electric, and its transits often bring changes and innovations that can come as a shock or a surprise. Uranus is a disruptor, an awakener, and a liberator. During the Uranus in Taurus transit, we've seen major changes to our financial structures as cryptocurrency has become more mainstream over the last several years. There's also been an increase in innovation around alternative energy sources, as we've seen a rise in solar panels as well as electric vehicles. And there has been more awareness around how nature has been impacted by human activity. Greta Thunberg began her activism at age 15 in the summer of 2018. So with all of this in mind, I think we'll see more headlines on these topics relating to transformation with resources of all kinds, from money to clean energy, as well as environmental topics and movements in the next few months as Uranus finishes up its journey through our fixed Earth sign, Taurus. Following that, on Saturday the 9th, Mercury retrograde begins at 6 degrees Sagittarius and will travel back until it reaches 20 degrees Scorpio at the end of the month. If you have any planets in the last 10 degrees of Scorpio, or those first 6 degrees of Sagittarius, then there's a chance you may feel personally victimized by Regina George. I mean, this Mercury retrograde cycle. But don't worry, since Mercury retrogrades so frequently, there's a pretty good chance that you have Mercury retrograde in your natal chart. And if you do, then this can be a particularly good time for you to revisit your creative pursuits or projects, especially those that you may have wandered away from. As standalone transits, Mercury and Sagittarius can be self-righteous or overly philosophical, and Mercury and Scorpio can pour oil into fire when emotions are heightened, partly because it's kind of fun to watch people get heated. Try to rein in those transit tendencies during this retrograde and redirect your mental energies towards learning and exploring topics and interests that can be delicious food for thought, but not necessarily table talk. Because Mercury's retrograde in Sagittarius can bring foot and mouth issues, and Mercury's retrograde in Scorpio can bring taboo topics into conversations where folks aren't prepared or perhaps interested in going there with you, try to read the room and take advantage of every opportunity to not speak up when you haven't had a chance to run it through your brain before it comes tumbling out of your mouth unfiltered into an arena that requires you to be a little bit more tactful. And yes, of course, there are those typical Mercury retrograde challenges you'll want to keep in mind. If you're traveling, it's always good to give yourself extra time to get wherever you're going and prepare for potential delays, especially considering the government shutdown and the impacts that that's probably having on TSA agents calling out sick because they're sick of working without pay. I mean, who can blame them? And also in the communication realm, when you go to send a text message, make sure it's going to the right person. And while we are a text-heavy culture nowadays, it's good to remember that a phone call can convey a message more accurately than a text message can when there's nuance involved. Sometimes what you send as neutral through text can be read or interpreted as condescending, emotional, angry, or whatever other emotions someone might assume or project onto you just because of your punctuation or lack of an emoji. Your tone, your voice, that can be very powerful to kind of shift the energy and get the message across. So give yourself grace and give others grace. Mercury is retrograde for all of us. Just knowing that some plans are going to fall through, some messages are going to go to spam, and some trips might involve some more plot twists than you are expecting. So back up your computer files, and if you can put off signing a major contract, then wait it out until mid-December. Finally, for our last transit, we have on Tuesday, 11/11, Jupiter joins planet Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune as it stations retrograde, where it will remain until March 10th, 2026. Jupiter, like all outer planets, has an annual retrograde, but since Jupiter spends about a year in each sign, it will only have one retrograde in each sign once every 12 years. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, which means Jupiter is functioning really well as it moves through the cardinal water sign, which is generally good news for everyone, but especially those who have those significant Cancer placements. Sun, moon, or rising in Cancer, you people are gonna get that biggest boost from this transit. So if you're feeling lucky, go buy that lottery ticket. Why not? That said, all of us can benefit from Jupiter's dance through the sky, regardless of the sign, as the retrograde period brings with it reflection, rumination, and reimagination. In Cancer, it's also likely to bring up remembering, as water can hold structural memory from vibration and energy, which I also know is kind of a topic of debate, so look into that, see what you can find. And during these 4 months, pay attention to what memories return to the surface of your consciousness, and also what dreams you're having at night, especially the ones that you remember. This transit is ripe for delivering downloads through emotions as well. So if you have a sudden feeling and you can't identify the source, sit with it, knowing that there may be a message in that feeling that you are meant to receive. Cancer's archetypes include the mother, and it rules the 4th house of home and family, so Jupiter's retrograde through this sign can also bring up memories around your family, your parents, home, your childhood, as well as opportunities to revisit those topics or even go to see those people or those places. Jupiter is known as the Great Benefic because it has the potential of lifting spirits, and so it also has a correlation to faith. This doesn't have to be religious faith by any means, but it can have to do with what you do or don't believe and what you do or don't have faith in. So thinking back to those Cancerian topics, nurturing, family, home, protection, safety, parental figures, this retrograde offers an opportunity to reconsider what you believe about these pieces of your puzzle and to reconstruct where your faith lies. As we close out this episode, let's return once more to the messages of the cards. The Queen of Pentacles teaches us to nourish what is real, what is growing, and what can sustain us, especially when the world feels unstable. Her magic isn't loud. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows how to turn seeds into success. The devil crosses her path as both temptation and teacher, testing our relationship to compliance under the illusion of comfort or familiarity. He asks, where have we mistaken security for servitude? Every time he appears, he gives us another chance to choose freedom, not the kind that's sold to us, but the kind we reclaim from within. Beneath it all, the tower shakes the foundation, burning away false idols and exposing the fragile systems long overdue for collapse. It's not here to punish, but to purify, to show us that the fall is not the end, it's the initiation. And as our guidance shining like a compass of truth, justice returns to remind us that balance is not static. It's a living rhythm. She asks us to see through the fog of fear and align our actions with our ethics and values. Together, these cards represent radical reclamation, choosing consciousness over convenience, truth over illusion, integrity over apathy. All reminders that sovereignty begins in small, sacred choices. What you buy, what you believe, and what you build. If you'd like to explore how these cosmic and collective energies are showing up in your own chart, you can book a live virtual reading with me or a pre-recorded mini reading. You'll find the link to schedule in the show notes below as always. Coming up in the November Part 2 episode, we'll explore the Scorpio new moon, the start of Sagittarius season, Saturn and Mercury both stationing direct, and Venus entering Sagittarius. Thank you for spending some time with me exploring the cards and cosmos. Stay grounded, stay curious, stay soulful of it, and I'll catch up with you mid-month.